Hi guys, this is lessons from lesson 13, First Kings chapters 10 and 11. This is continues the story of Solomon's life and has many lessons for us. First, it has some important lessons for us about leadership. I see in the first two chapters of First Kings a reluctance on the part of David to step aside and let others take his place. David was once a great leader, but there came a time when he was no longer able to continue to lead the kingdom. He was leading with a greatly diminished capacity. He seems to not have been aware of what was going on in his own kingdom. He was certainly not aware of Adonijah's plot to seize the throne. You know, there comes a time when leaders ought to lead by stepping aside before others wish they had, and before someone has to come along and force them to let go. Adonijah can also teach us a lesson about leadership. There are those today like Adonijah who are far too eager to be in charge, who grasp for positions of power and prestige. Adonijah would not have been a servant king. He would have been more like a dictator. Over the years I have served in the church, I have observed some people who are too eager to be leaders and were too driven to be placed in positions of authority. It would seem that many, if not most, of Israel's great leaders were those who began as servants. There's another lesson to be learned about leadership in our text. Those whom God has called to lead need to deal quickly and decisively with those who would undermine their leadership. It seems to me that David should have personally dealt with men like Joab and Shimei, but at least he had the wisdom to encourage his son to deal with them. Wise leaders identify those who are wicked and seek to remove them from any leadership role. Proverbs 22 and 10 says, "Drive out the scorner and contention will leave. Strife and insult will cease." I've been especially troubled by the downfall of David and Solomon both as kings. At least David spiritually recovered from his fall, something that Solomon sadly never did, so far as the Bible tells us. The failures of these two great men should serve as a warning to each of us. Both men allowed their sexual passions to dominate their lives with devastating consequences. Both men, in my opinion, were driven by their egos as well as by their hormones. David had become proud and arrogant as a military leader. He stayed home when he should have been with his men fighting the enemy. He abused his position as commander in chief of uh, uh, of Israel's armed forces, when he sent Uriah, one of his faithful servants, to be killed in order to steal his wife. It is my opinion that Solomon's sexual passions were inflamed also by his ego. He listened to the flattery of women like the Queen of Sheba, and he liked what he heard. Solomon's fame spread until the Queen of Sheba hears about him. She is so intrigued that she comes by herself to Israel to test his wisdom and with some tough questions. She shows up in Jerusalem with a huge entourage and with camels bearing gold and spices and jewels to give to Solomon. They sit down for a long talk, and she asks him everything that's on her mind. He answers all of her questions, and there was nothing that he could not explain to her, the Bible says. The Queen of Sheba was so overpowered with astonishment at the things that she had seen and heard that she fainted. Solomon did not disobey God by engaging in sex outside of marriage. He just married any woman he wanted. This too was a violation of God's law for Israel's kings that's found in Deuteronomy chapter 17. God commanded Solomon not to marry foreign women because he knew they'd turn him to idolatry. And that's exactly what happened. But Solomon couldn't resist. He just loved those exotic Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittite women. I suspect that most of Solomon's marriages were not as a result of passion, but a means of extending his power and his alliances with other nations. Even so, the Bible says it was his wives who turned his heart from the Lord to the point that he began to worship foreign gods, which is sad, considering Solomon was supposed to be one of the wisest men in the Bible. A lesson for us. So go ahead now and read your lessons and then answer the questions in your worksheet, and we'll see you again next time.